Greetings. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CRC Music in the studio. My name is Kurt Erickson. I am a professor of music here at Cosumnes River College. Today I am joined by my two co-hosts, Omari Tao, as well as Lisa Beebe. Omari, Lisa, welcome.
Oh, welcome, welcome. Good
Oh, thanks, Chris.
afternoon.
Well, we have a really a special treat today. Today we are welcoming Ben Boone, just an incredible artist, straddling both the jazz and the classical worlds. Ben, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's so happy to be here with you all.
Great, Ben. Where are you? Where are you at right now? Where are
So
you these
I am in the bustling Mecca to the south of you, Fresno, California.
Ooh,
days?
And I'm
Hometown.
in my son's room because the I can get better internet.
Ben, for our audience here, let me just, I want to read a short bio from Ben so we get an idea of who he is and what he's all about. Saxophonist, composer, and educator, Benjamin Boone straddles the world of new music and jazz. His Origin Records release, The Poetry of Jazz, was voted #3 Best Album of 2018 in DownBeat Magazine's annual Readers Poll, just behind Chick Corea, RIP, and Wynton Marsalis. Featured on NPR's All Things Considered, it was an editor's pick in the Paris Review and praised in leading musical and literary publications. His latest Origin release, The Poets Are Gathering, received equally glowing reviews and has been hailed as defining a new musical genre. I would concur with that. Boone was awarded #3 Best Alto Saxophonist of 2020 in Brazil's 46th annual Jazz Station Award, and as well as Ben Boone with the Ghana Jazz Collective, with which he recorded the album Joy. It was named #5 Instrumental Group of 2020. His new music compositions have been performed in 38 countries and have garnered 18 honors and awards. Boone is a Fulbright Scholar to Ghana during the years 2017 and 18, and the Republic of Moldova. He's a professor of Cal State University, Fresno, where he teaches music theory and composition. That's the short version, but still very impressive. Welcome, Ben.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's really a delight to be here. And before I forget, one thing I want to share with you is, since we have students in the room, right, is that the short story is that in my life I've been interested in just tons and tons of things. I was talking with the people who were on screen just a minute ago, and we were going off about all these things we're interested in: psychology and art. We were just, so I'm a very curious person, and all in my career people were saying, well, why don't you just set practice on I'm sorry, why don't you just focus on practicing saxophone? You could be a really good saxophonist. That's what my saxophone teacher would tell me. My composition teacher would say, why are you bothering with the saxophone? You could be a really good composer. You need to focus on composition. And then my history teacher would say, wow, you could be a really good researcher. Why don't you just stop playing and composing and focus on your research? And so, people have always been telling me that I needed to tamp down my passions, right? And what I kind of say to myself is, well, why on earth should I do that? Because that is my passion. So as we're going through our conversation today, think about what your passion is, and maybe have a piece of paper by your computer and write down what your passion is. And just a quick FYI, your passion isn't necessarily your occupation. Sometimes I worked construction for years to pay my way through graduate school and doctorate school. My first real job was mowing yards. My second real job was washing dishes, which I did for over a year. And then I was a waiter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes you do whatever it takes to make money so you can do what? So you can follow your passions. And the last thing I just wanted to say to preface all these comments is, some really good things have happened in my career, But a lot of those good things that happened really late in my career. I'm 56 years, 7 years, something like that, years old. And, if you keep at something for a long time and you persevere, then good things will happen, right? Things don't happen immediately. In fact, I think it's Lady Gaga that said, there is a discipline to passion. There is a discipline to passion. So you can have a passion, but you have to couple it with discipline, and then really good things can happen. So a lot of the things we're going to talk about today happened after I was 40 years old, to keep it in context. So I was actually the worst. Last thing. See, I told you people that I go on and can't stop, right? I'm sorry. But you students need to know this, you students, okay? When I went to school, when I went to undergraduate school, I was the absolute least prepared music major in the entire department. And I had a crisis like one month into it, because they were talking about triads and they were talking about different keys and all of this kind of stuff. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Okay. Because I learned how to play by listening to records. I grew up in frickin' Statesville, North Carolina, a podunk little town, which I love, but podunk little industrial town in the middle of North Carolina. And I didn't know diddly squat. Okay. So I remember vividly realizing I either needed to drop out or I needed to work 3 times as hard as everybody else. And so I made a commitment to myself, because I didn't want to embarrass myself for being a quitter and going back home. I decided I'm going to work twice as hard as everybody else. And I talked to my mentor about it, and he said, yeah, you're right here, Ben. Everybody else is here. But if you do everything that I tell you to do, you're gradually going to catch up. And maybe by the time you're a senior, you'll be here. But I'm going to teach you how to be a lifelong learner. And so maybe you'll graduate, but then 10 years after you graduate, maybe good things will start to happen. So I knew what I was signing up for, and I knew that I was thinking like goal-wise 10, 15 years down the road. And so I'm just, any good thing that's happened has happened because of that work ethic and because I'm a lifelong learner. And I came up because I was here. So maybe you feel like you're here, right? Maybe you feel like you're behind. So you can catch up, but you have to think in the long term and not in the short term. So
Yeah.
anyway, I gabbed way too much, but I wanted to inspire you.
No, you're
I
doing it.
wanted
Preach.
to.
Keep preaching. And I think it's very appropriate because, during the talk today, we're going to look at not only your wide-ranging interests, but all these wonderful things that you're doing, which usually aren't coupled together. And uh, I think what can often happen is we see people who are at the stage of their life where they're really doing good work now, and there's this. It can be intimidating because you think, oh, well, that person is doing really great work, and you just sort of assume that they sort of like came out of the womb like fully formed, and that's what they were doing. And we don't hear the stories, and people, we're going to hear some incredible music, but they're not going to hear all the things where, oh, that was a little half baked, it didn't quite work out well. And that's where the perseverance comes in, right? It's the 10,000 hours. I'm just going to keep at it. I'm going to keep working at it, and longer term, then we're going to have the payoff.
You have to, I think it's Nina Simone, a quote, you have to be willing to fail to succeed. You have to be willing to fail to succeed. So, in any endeavor in life, if you're ever going to get good at it, you're going to mess up hundreds of times before you get good at it. Just like when you learned how to walk, right? How many times did you mess up when you were learning how to walk, right? So, actually learning a musical language is the same as learning how to walk. So I try very hard to wear my failures on, to be proud of my failures, because that means I'm trying hard, and not to take failures personally, but to, who is it? Tavis Smiley, who says you have to fail forward, right? So a failure doesn't set you back. A failure sets you forward, because then you know what didn't work and you can learn from it, and then you can do better the next time.
I love
So
it.
my life is a series of failures that then have led to some pretty decent successes.
You've already endeared yourself by quoting Nina Simone.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
I was going to say that, Amari. Made a new best friend.
and then I was sharing with students of Brene Brown. Brene Brown stated in one of her books about leading, it said, "Embrace the suck." So that's the
Yes.
idea that what you were saying is really really awesome. Um, I'd
Can I
love to
add
hear how
one
you
thing
find.
that came to
Okay.
mind? One of my favorite things. I'm sorry, but I know I'm going to forget if I don't say it. And this is more important than people hearing my music. Duke Ellington, everyone, if you don't know, is one of the greatest American composers and performers of all time. Duke Ellington wrote tons of music that influenced generations of people. And he was interviewed on a talk show, the 1960s version of Jimmy Fallon. It was called the Johnny Carson Show. And Johnny asked him, "Hey, how do you write so much music, Duke? How do you do it?" And he said, "Well, Johnny, it's really, really simple." And he picked up a pencil and he said, "For the first part of the process, I only use this end of the pencil. And for the last part of the process, I use this end." So what he's saying is you let the creative flow, keep the creative flow going. Don't, if you write something that sucks, write through it. Don't stop and say it suck and beat yourself up, right? Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Then you can go back, you can be the editor and you can clean things up. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing that he did. So I'm sorry, Amari, that image has always stuck with me.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's perfectly apt for your being with us today, what we're trying to do, I'm sure, with your students, with our students, and then just sort of inspiring all of our communities to move through this time and through our art. And so, yeah, I love these words. These are fantastic.
Yeah, I feel this could be a 3-hour talk, but we're gonna try. We might
I told you.
we might have a part 2, a part 3, a part 4.
Let's hear what it's all about. Yes.
Well, you know what, let's talk about and hear some of the music making that you have created. And I wanted to start with because I am a huge fan of your work. I'm going to start with the poetry of jazz, which is one of my favorite. And this recording, this release is so unique on so many levels. This collaboration with the incredible, former U.S. Poet Laureate Philip Levine, and the spoken word tracks, and how for me it's almost sort of like chamber music, or there's an art song kind of quality to it, and his delivery is just incredible. And so before we're going to play a little bit of the trailer for this particular CD, but maybe could you tell us a little bit about this, about your work with Philip Levine, about working with spoken word poets?
Sure. So the very short story is that Philip Levine is a U.S. Poet Laureate, Pulitzer Prize winning poet, for a colleague at my university. I absolutely love his poetry. I actually do not like a lot of poetry because I don't understand it. And I particularly don't like to listen to people read poetry that's hard to understand. But I love his poetry because I can understand it and the message is clear. He tells stories that have deep, rich meaning. He addresses topics that are near and dear to my heart. And I think it's just accessible. And so I always wanted to collaborate with him. I finally got to near the end of his life. If you listen to a lot of poetry and jazz recordings, I'll tell you what I do not like. I do not like when the musicians merely react to what the poet is saying. Like I went up a hill. It sounds like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, right? The other thing I don't like, and you can, if you take the wonderful Amanda Gorman poem that was read at the inauguration, tons of people have put music to that and put it up on YouTube. Most of it I hate because they're treating her words like it's a movie soundtrack, right? So the music is so in the back, it's a backdrop. So what I tried to do with Philip, and I hope you hear on the recording, is that the music in the poetry are equal partners, and that there's a synergy between it, and the way, and we can get into this more later, but when you're listening, realize that the way I was trying to set the spoken word is as if it were a musical instrument. So I heard it as a melody that has rhythm, that has pitch, that has timbre, that has phrasing. And I tried to make that work with the music and the music work with the words, rather than merely reacting to the music or making it like it was in a film and it's like just a backing track. So that was my goal.
Well, I think, it's what you did is incredibly effective because, as I said, this incredible, the music's incredible, and again, the first connection I started to make with this was more of the art song tradition, where there is that sort of kind of equality. So let's see if we can get play the first sort of few minutes of the trailer now, so we can hear some of this. Oh, and see, it's a video, I do believe.
Gin. The first time I drank gin, I thought it must be hair tonic. My brother swiped the bottle from a guy whose father owned a drugstore that sold booze in those ancient, honorable days when we acknowledged the stuff was a drug. 3 of us passed the bottle around, each tasting with disbelief. People paid for this? People had to have it the way we had to have the women we never got near? Actually, they were girls. But never mind, the important fact was their impenetrability. The unknowable. Practicing his horn on the Williamsburg Bridge hour after hour. Woodshedding, the musicians called it. But his woodshed was the world. The enormous tone he borrowed from Hawkins. It could fill a club to overflowing. Blown into tatters by the sea winds, teaching him humility. Out of the gray hills of industrial barns, out of rain, out of bus ride West Virginia to kiss my ass, out of buried aunties, mothers hardening like pounded stumps, out of stumps, out of the bones need to sharpen and the muscles to stretch, they lie and grow. The radio is playing Bird Flight. Parker, in his California tragic voice 50 years ago, his faltering lover man just before he crashed into chaos. I would guess that outside the recording studio in Burbank, the sun was high above the jacarandas. It was late March. The worst of yesterday's rain had come and gone. The sky was washed. Bird could have seen for miles if he'd looked. But what he saw was so foreign. He clenched his eyes, shook his head, and barked like a dog. Just once. And then Howard McGee took his arm and assured him he'd be okay. I know this because Howard told me, years later. Told me he thought Bird could lie down in the hotel room they shared, sleep for an hour or more, and waken as himself.
Wow, really amazing. Really, really amazing. The synthesis between the stories, his voice, the music, I mean, it's just also amazing. And what I really like too is that so often, you know, it can be a little cliche or self-referential to just, oh, here's a poem I'm reciting or setting about music. But it just really captures the stories. And your other track, Soloing, is another example of this as well. And it's just really a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Shall I piggyback on what I was saying before about rhythm and stuff? Or
Sure, please do.
Amari and I were talking about that a little bit before. So for you listening, first of all, English is an isochronous language. Okay, so that means the most important words are evenly spaced and accented. So listen to me talking. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not consciously trying to alter the accents that I'm using. Did you hear what I just said? The accents that I'm using. What words did I accent? Accent in using. What are the two most important words in that sentence? Accent in using. So in other words, we take the words that are the most meaningful in the sentence. Did you hear that? Most meaningful in the sentence, meaningful sentence. That's the core essence of that sentence, right? And we not only accent them, but we not only accent them, but we space them out evenly. So if I say, my chest really hurts, I think I need to go to the doctor, right? Chest hurts, think, go doctor, right? Those are the most important. And those form a meter. Wow, my chest really hurts. I think I need to go to the doctor. Did you hear how those are forming a meter? They're forming a meter. And so the essence is that speech actually is music, and it forms rhythms and it forms meters. It actually forms pitches. There's a phenomenon called rhythmic synchrony, meaning that I can sit and watch you on a date, and I can look and see whether your eye blinks are coordinated with the person that you're on the date with, or your chews are coordinated, etc. And if they are coordinated, then you're in sync, and you probably will have a second date. But if you're not in sync, like right now, look at Dr. Erickson. He's nodding his head. And I bet if we were in person, he would be nodding it in the rhythm, the meter that you're hearing, right? Because this is isochronous, it's making a meter. He's nodding his head in that meter if he's listening, if he wants me to continue, right?
Yeah, clearly I want a second date.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, we'll do it. Part 2. Okay, but one of the reasons Zoom freaks you out is that there's a lag. And so when you see people nodding like Omari is right now, that's a little bit out of sync. And that's part of what's causing the cognitive dissonance in your head, because what he's telling you, because it's out of sync, is I'm not really listening to you. But what he's trying to tell you is I'm really listening to you, right? That's the power that the rhythm of speech has as it aligns with body movement. It's a channel of nonverbal communication. Now, for my doctoral dissertation, what I ended up doing was saying, well, gosh, if there is rhythmic synchrony, I wonder if there's pitch synchrony. And there is pitch synchrony. So in essence, if I take you're speaking and you end up ending on this note, and the highest note before that is this, then the note that the next person will be green, starts with, will either be that note or an interval that's consonant with the last note or this note. And that indicates like a head nod. I'm listening to you. Let's continue. We're basically in the same pitch area. But if I enter on a note just right here, like a half step above or something, I'm indicating I disagree with you, or I don't want to continue the conversation, or I want to argue with you. Okay. So as you can tell, you can actually listen to people's speech pitch and you can hear it as music. So I thought it would kind of be fun to play an example of that. I did this research like 25 years ago. And since then, people have gotten hip to this and have actually transcribed people's speech and put it to music in a way that's really fun and really interesting. So I sent a video of Sarah Palin, who was a vice presidential candidate many years ago, and she was known for not staying on topic. So what you'll hear, she was kind of new to the national scene. She was uptight. She was nervous when she was being interviewed nationally. So she switches topic a whole lot, right? And so when you transcribe it into music, the fact that she's switching pitch and moving from key to key to key is an indication that she's not staying on topic. But it also shows how speech can be conceived of as music in a really, really short little video clip. So if we can play that, I think it might be instructive for the people that are watching. So this
allow them to spend more and put more money into the economy instead of helping these big financial institutions that played a role in creating this mess.
That's why I say I, like every American I'm speaking with, we're ill about this position that we have been put in, where it is the taxpayers looking to bail out. But ultimately, what the bailout does is help those who are concerned about the health care reform that is needed to help shore up our economy, helping the... It's got to be all about job creation too, shoring up our economy and putting it back on the right track. So healthcare reform and reducing taxes and reining in spending has got to accompany tax reductions and tax relief for Americans. And trade, we've got to see trade as opportunity, not as a competitive, scary thing, but 1 in 5 jobs being created in the trade sector today. We've got to look at that as more opportunity. All those things under the umbrella of job creation. This bailout is a part of that.
If this doesn't
So I laugh every time I see that. It's like 100, I've seen it 100 times. So that's a very, very quick, Google Palin's song. I put it in the chat. And there are many of these. Hubert Hay, who's a New York pianist, is the one that did these things. So that's a very long way of saying, when I approach spoken word, I approach it like Dr. Erickson, who's a fabulous art song composer. I really think about it as a musical melody and not just like someone's talking over something.
It's fantastic. I think we might have misplaced Dr. Erickson, or Professor Erickson.
He went to go search more of those.
Yeah, he was taken aback by it. I was thinking about this is so fascinating. There are these wonderful cadence points where you sort of the idea that you were talking about is that there are these wonderful moments where it's clear that you're on topic, and then we switch, and then it just changes so abruptly. It's beautiful to hear. There are a lot of people who are, like you said, are doing this. I was thinking about a drummer named Anthony Ty Johnson, who had come through town, and I think he's out in LA now, who's just doing this with drums. There are some metal guitarists who've been doing this, and it's really exciting because you can hear the rhythmic element, the pitch element. I was going to ask you about, there's a composer named Scott Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with Scott, but he sort of takes that text and cuts it up and then follows the exact same thing you're talking about here, the rhythms, and just really clips them and then focuses in what is that rhythmic value and then plays with it. There's some work he did with Cronus Quartet and some others. I am absolutely astounded by. Are you... you bring this up, but does this make its way into your music in that such a specific manner? I don't know if I perceive it as much in like the poetry of jazz. It seems it's more like you described, that individual instrument. We're not always imitating one another in what you've got. How are you building on the text that you have?
That's a wonderful question. So in the jazz releases, it's more just that it's an intuition,
Mm.
and I listen to the poet recite the poem several times, and it's not like I scientifically analyze it. It's more intuitive, like, oh, they're sort of centering on C sharp, and then in this section they tend to do this, they go faster, the meter changes because there's something different. So it's more like that. But I have, if any of you want to Google this, we're not going to have time to listen to it today, but I took these recordings of Philip Levine for this jazz thing and used them in a classical piece that I wrote called Waterless Music about the drought in California.
Mm.
And I put that in the chat. If you Google waterless music, you'll hear that. So I took little segments of his speech and I put them together so that they really do form an instrument. So I took little snippets and created a narration montage, and I've done that in several other pieces as well, where I use the voice and I can cut it up and then place it the way that I want to place it. So yeah, I think it's ripe territory, and the human ear and the human brain will always gravitate toward human speech, always. Like Dr. Erickson will tell you, one of the things that just is terrible in classical art song is when here you have this wonderful singer who's doing this wonderful job, and the piano's written at quadruple forte, really busy, right in the range of the voice, and you can't hear the frickin' voice. So why have a voice if you can't hear the voice, right? So yeah, it's ripe territory. So maybe the students that are listening could experiment with that, right? How can you use the spoken word? And that's what happens in slam poetry, right? The spoken voice is thought of like an instrument and like a percussion instrument. And that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I keep getting bumped off here, so my apologies here. But when Zoom kicks me out, I jump back on as quick as I can. It's not personal. So I might, just in case this might have already been discussed, but I think it's a question of perception too, because there are certain things that we're conscious of when we're making these connections, but there's other things that subconsciously I think that we're still making those connections, and I think that's true with what we're talking about here. And I think musically that's analogous to a lot of like the motifs and harmonic relationships where you might hear a piece and, oh, this is wonderful, it works.
Frozen again from my side. Anyone else frozen?
It is, but he looks so good. I feel
I
like
was
whenever
going to
my
say,
Zoom
usually when
freezes,
I
I'm always
get
like,
frozen, it's like,
I know.
it's so thoughtful.
Oh, here he comes.
Oh,
There he is. There he is.
there are two Kurt's.
you can use that as a screensaver now. That's really good.
I'm just gonna let you guys talk for the rest of this because
No, it's such a good question too. I mean, just you keep both cameras on. Fantastic. No, I love what you're saying.
yeah, so levels of perception. So there are the things that we're aware of, the things that we're not aware of, but nevertheless, I think our brain makes those connections. And as we dig deeper, we see the level of complexity, even if we didn't see it on the first time at that surface level. It's still there, and it makes it a more complex and intriguing art form.
Well, Kurt, as a composer of art song, especially like with Leader Alive, a lot of the text that you're using has already been set, and yet you find these new things. I'm interested, Ben, if you revisit poetry, or if there are things that come back to you and you go, if I heard it again, I might reset it a different way. I might do something differently with it.
Yeah. One of the tracks on my latest CD, which came out in October, and I think we'll hear a track of near the end, was written for U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera. And I had done a choir version of it. And then I scaled that down into a just solo piano with voice. I do, but it's almost like once I'm done with something, I think to myself, well, I've learned my lessons, let me apply it to something different. That one's done. So I very rarely go back because there are things that I have to get done in the future. And so I just, cut my losses and focus on the next one and try to apply the lessons learned to the next one. So I rarely go back and redo something once I've decided I'm finished.
Can we talk, thinking of the next one, is it possible to talk about, I think next on the list was Joy, was it? Was that on the list?
Sure.
Want to talk about that? And how it came to be and what it's about. I think it's one of the first things I heard of yours. It's got that very bright opening. I think the first thing we'll hear in the video, and I just like I easily wanted to imitate that sound. I wanted to hear, hear it back. But there's a great story behind it, and there's all kinds of information. Could you talk to us about that? We can hear some of it.
Sure. So here's a quiz for everybody in the room. Are you ready? Everybody in the room?
We're in trouble.
Okay. And I wish I don't have a slide or I could do this and it would be more fun. But where is Ghana? Ghana. Ghana. Where is Ghana? Like on a world map, where? So someone said Africa. Africa is the size of China, the United States, and Australia put together. So, and unlike some elected national officials, Africa is not a country. Okay, it is a continent. Little geography lesson here. So if Africa roughly looks like this, roughly like, ooh, boy, this is terrible. Roughly like that. Oh, that's so awful. Oh my gosh. Someone's going to watch this video, one of my Ghanaian friends.
I was going to rave about your Zoom skills a moment ago.
So there's roughly, so here's Northern Africa, right? I'll share with you, here's Ethiopia basically, and Kenya's on the eastern side too. So Ghana is in Western Africa. It was a British colony. It was the first country that was formerly a colony that was ruled by a African when all of that happened after World War II in the 50s. And I was very fortunate to be able to be a Fulbright scholar, which means I was attached to the US Embassy and I had the distinction. Let's see, I guess I can say this. Can I be real with the audience, everybody? Can I just be real? Like, I'm not going to make anyone mad. So I happen to work for the executive branch of the US government in 2018, the US Department of State, right? So that was interesting, as you can imagine. So anyway, I was a US Fulbright scholar. I lived there for a year. I taught at the University of Ghana. It's a fabulous program. You students, you can apply to be a Fulbrighter to get a grant to go to a university somewhere else. So you might want to look into that, or study abroad program. University of Ghana hosts tons of international students. So look into that and contact me because I can give you the scoop on Ghana and the cool things to do. So anyway, I was a Fulbright scholar in Ghana. Very, very long story, a little bit shorter. The music making in Ghana is absolutely incredible. It's integral to the part of existence in life. Everyone makes music in Ghana. No one is excluded. You can go to a concert, people will come up and start playing the drums with someone, or start singing, or start doing the shaker. There's no line between professional and novice. Everyone is embraced. No one looks down on you if you can't play well. It's that music making connects you as human beings, and it's the most free I've ever felt in my life as a musician. So I played with everyone. You can go to my website. I played with traditional musicians. I started a group called the New Global Ensemble that had a tour of Europe canceled because of COVID, by the way. And I made a recording with this great group of musicians that I did tours with while I was there and played with, called the Ghana Jazz Collective. and making music with them was one of the highlights of my life. Let me show you real quick before we play the trailer. The main element of music making in Ghana is that, let's just say that here is you in life. And do you see that I'm putting these hashes trying to show that that forms a meter? It's like a steady meter. This is your life and your existence. But guess what? Life doesn't always go the way that you want it to go. And there are going to be hurdles that you're going to be faced with, but you need to keep living your life. So here's you. Okay, I'm going to put a you there. That's you. And here's life. Okay, so life's not always going to line up the way that you want it to. So here, look at how life's not lining up. Look at that. Do you see that life's not lining up? Right? It lines up here, but it's not lined up here. It's not lined up here. But oh my God, look, you kept going and persevering. So life is going to line up there. And then if I keep this pattern going, you're going to see that for every 2 of your life, of you end up lining up with your life. Oh my God, there's a life lesson here, isn't there? Goodness gracious. So this is called a polyrhythm. So for every 3, it equals every 2. So that means if I go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Do it with me. Clap, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Chocolate, 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 chocolate. Okay, great. Now let's switch perspectives. So we were thinking that 2 was the main thing. Now let's pretend that 3 is the main thing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, da, 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 ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. I'm putting 2 over 3 now, right? So I switched my perspective from thinking about 2 as the main pulse to thinking about 3 as the main pulse. But I still put 2 over it. So this in music is what's called it's not letting me write. It's called a polyrhythm, meaning 2 different meters happening at one time. Okay, so that's the main musical element in Ghanaian music. And so in the tradition, if you go to my website and listen to the traditional music in traditional musicians, you'll hear that a ton, but you also hear it in the music that I made with these great jazz musicians.
Wow. Well, why don't we go ahead and hear a little bit of one of the tracks here, if we can.
I saw you were signaling to us that we were hearing a meter with a group of 5 beats.
Yeah. So I have a fun thing. I do like 3 in that tune. I do 3 measures of 5 and then a measure of 6/4. So it just shifts things a little bit. So
what was the culture like for jazz when you were there in Ghana?
yeah,
Can you,
there's a core group. Ghana is really interesting. They get tons of influence from the United States. Ethiopia too. That's where the last tune, the pictures are from. Ethiopia, in the embassy, I was there to give some talks, and their education center is called the Satchmo Center after Louis Armstrong, the famous jazz trumpet player. So actually, after World War II, if you think about what music was popular in the US, a lot of it was jazz. Jazz was created by what? By enslaved African peoples. And so a lot of the jazz musicians, the State Department had them go to Africa to share their music as a means of peacemaking with the newly freed former colonies. And so there's a huge history of jazz music and jazz musicians from the U.S. going back to different African countries, and so there's a linkage. It's a fascinating history we kind of can't get into right now, but in part 2 or 3 on our second or third date we can. But that linkage is really it's a fascinating linkage, and if any of I would implore any of the people that are in the room that have a history, maybe you're a first generation, second generation, whatever, from wherever you are, right? Examine that history and see what that history is. It can be really fascinating and really enlightening for you, and it teaches you, quite frankly, if I may say, some of the horrendous things that have happened in this country. And I happen to think, yes, I'm going to get political, that it's wonderful to look at your country and to criticize the things that aren't the way that they should be, because how the hell else are we going to get better? So just saying we're the greatest ever, that means that there's no room for improvement. So I think it's totally patriotic to say, well, no, we enslaved a group of people that history is still haunting us today because we put these people down forever, and we're still suffering from that, and we need to deal with it as a country. So, that really influences my work a lot in thinking about how can we make this a better world and a better country for generations to come. So sorry, had to get that in there.
Amanda Gorman did lay that out for us at the inauguration, so you're in good company.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in that company, but I mean, we need to do that. So, so being in Ghana was just a fascinating experience. I did write a article for DownBeat Magazine that goes more into the polyrhythms that we alluded to. So maybe the hosts can make that available to all of you, and you can practice it and post videos of you trying to walk and do the polyrhythms. That would be really fun.
wow. Well, these are just really lovely sentiments, and very inspiring. And I think it's probably a good segue if we switch over and talk about your latest recording, "The Poets Are Gathering," and specifically the track that just blew me away as I was listening to it last night. "That's My Son There." Could you give us maybe a little bit of an intro?
Sure. So, shorten it, Ben. So, as I was knowing that I was going to go to Ghana, one reason I went to Ghana, I'm just going to shoot it straight, like it is fast. So, as I approached 50, I started thinking, well, who am I as a professor? What legacy do I want to leave? How can I change things for the better? So there'd been something bugging me about music theory, which I teach a lot of. And that is that I look at my students and then I look at the music in the theory textbooks and I think to myself, this music is not reflective of my students. So I actually am being a part of colonializing these students by saying their music's not worthy of study. Only like dead white European men are worthy of study. So that happens to be my own heritage, right? I'm German and English. But that's just wrong. It doesn't mean that Beethoven and Bach aren't fabulous and worthy of study. I'm not saying not to study them, but we need to globalize our curriculum. We need to include women. We need to include examples of music from around the world to show our students that that music is worthy of study too. So I went to Ghana in part to educate myself. So, you know, as I was thinking about this, it also is that in a way, a lot of music curriculum is an act of white supremacy, in my personal opinion. So I'm kind of on a crusade to broaden the theory curriculum in the music curriculum. And part of that also is addressing social ills, right? So I thought, okay, if I'm going to do a project, I need to do something that addresses what's going on in the world right now. What's going on in the world right now? Well, oh my God, there's a lot of police murder going on. The systemic racism is worse. With the prior administration, a lot of the racists were given license to vent their racism, and it became more acceptable. And right, I mean, we've just like, you know, the Charleston mass shootings, which was a racial thing, what happened in Charlottesville, just all of this, the hate crime, right? So I also thought, okay, I've done these two things with Philip Levine, who is actually of Russian descent. But I need to broaden out. I need to be more inclusive. I need to invite people that have a message of social justice to be a part of a project. And so that's what this project is. The poets are gathering. They're gathering why? They're gathering to say the world is screwed up. We need to do something about it. We need to try to make it right. So, you know, it's a wide diversity of 11 poets that have a number of different perspectives and come from a number of different cultures. And this track is by Patricia Smith, who is LA Times Book Award winner, National Slam Poet Champion for 4 times, Pulitzer Prize winning finalist. And I gravitated toward her because she speaks of the experience of being an African-American woman in the 21st century. And that's a perspective that often gets lost, I think. So she did this amazing poem of police murder, but it's from the perspective of a mother who's seeing her son who's been killed. And I think it's one of the most powerful deliveries I've ever heard. So I'm very proud and honored to be a part of helping to or just collaborating with her on this.
We'll take a listen, and I also added the links to your Bandcamp and information there in the chat, so everyone can link to a broader information about Ben Boone's music, but also to that particular album. So check it out right there. Let's take a listen.
That's my sun collapsed there. My sun crumpled there. That's my sun collapsed there. My sun crumpled there. My daughter lying there. My son positioned there. My daughter repositioned there. My daughter as exhibit A there. My daughter dumped over there. My son hidden away there. My son blue there. My son dangling there. My son caged there. My daughter on the gurney there, on the slab there, in the drawer there. My daughter splayed there, my son locked down there. My son hanging there, my son bleeding out there. My son growing frigid there. my daughter deposited there, my son inside the chalk there, my daughter being bagged there, my son on the slab there, my son crushed there, my son rearranged there, my son crumpled in the door there, my daughter's neck shrinking in the noose there, my son's left eye over there, my son as exhibit B there, my son behind the wheel there, my son under the wheel there, my son slumped over the wheel there, my son, my daughter, blooded and not moving, in the doorway, on the stoop, down the block, in front of her kids, just inside the barbershop, face down in the street, outside the bodega, inside the bodega, in the back alley behind the bodega, on the videotape a block from home, leaving home, hanging out at home, in the schoolyard, on the blacktop, in his bed, in her kitchen, in my arms, in my arms, in my arms. That's my son, shot to look thug. That's my daughter, shot to look more animal, shot as kill, shot as prey, shot as solution, shot as conquest, shot as lesson, shot as warning, shot as comeback, shot as payback, shot for sport, shot for history. That's my son, not being alive anymore there. That's my child, coming to rest one layer below the surface of the rest of my life. There. That's my son collapsed there.
Bravo. Extraordinary.
Not easy listening.
But it's right listening, right? It's what we need to be hearing, and like you said, it's what needs to be done, explored, and it's all what I'm struck by. I was thinking about referring this back to They Feed They Lions and other poetry settings you've had that deal with well, for lack of a better term, black liberation movement, black lives movements, and things like that. And what I find is, as quite often, these collaborations between poetry, the nexus between these different arts, can seem sort of artificial. And I find that this and the other, as well as the other that I mentioned, are so honest. There's no pretense about it, and that's what I appreciate the most about hearing it, is that it's not, oh, I've got this clever idea and I'm going to set this thing and we're going to make a thing, but instead you just feel heart from everyone. And I think part of that I feel from your allowance or decision to make sure that the voice and the reading of the poetry is equal in a different kind of way than when we set art song. It's equal, but we've taking something out of it in a totally different way. So this is it's extraordinary to feel it the way you have exhibited it. So thank you for.
Well, that's very meaningful. I really do appreciate that. And for those of you in the audience, it would be great if you shared that video with your friends, because I think that's something I'd like more people to listen to, because I don't think you can listen to that and not have empathy. So one little inside scoop on that particular track, just, maybe it speaks to what you're hearing. So the way we did that, Patricia came into the studio. We had a chat for like 30 minutes, and she's like, was no nonsense. It's like, you know, she kind of looks at me and she it's like, what am, is this going to be good? Should I be here? Should I not be here? And so we just talked for a while, and then it was like, well, we went through a few poems I had thought maybe we should do. And then, this is like the third one. This is the third one that we did. So she trusted us at this point, right? I don't think she trusted us at the beginning. And the method was simply that we'd pick a poem, we'd talk about what it meant to her, and then how it resonated with us. And then we had her read it a couple of times, like just read it, and then the musicians would make comments about, maybe pause here, whatever. And then we just did it. I mean, I had a sketch for the piano part and the vamp and the chord that we were going to go to and stuff. I wrote that in the studio. So it was very, very, very organic, very organic. And I think that was the first or second take. That was it. And so most of it's freely improvised. And that's the look on my face after. It's sort of like, oh my God, what just happened?
Yeah.
So I think we all felt that magic of communicating and trusting each other and respecting each other, and conceptually having a clear idea of what we wanted to do, but everything wasn't written down or anything. It was very organic.
Well, it's probably
Careful
lucky
listening
that.
too.
Oh, sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just say, and careful and very intentional listening too. I can tell is an important part of your process, listening to the poet and listening to the words, because you want to contribute something to the poem, not just take from it, and also not make a spectacle of pain, right? Because that actually does more violence than good, and in that instance. So I think that intention really comes through, and listening is such an important thing and an important skill, which I can tell you're very good at because of the way you've matched how our pitch and the rhythms of our voice and all these things that I've always known but never thought about. They're just so intuitive. So I think your listening comes through in your speaking and in your music, which is a very beautiful thing.
Well, that made my day.
Well, I was just going to say that I think maybe you got a little lucky in that you had a couple of previous attempts, and that by the third time that she trusted you with this one, because who knows if you would have started perhaps with this piece. And I'm guessing maybe because it is so personal that maybe there was a reluctance. This isn't, if you're just in a more kind of get to know you phase, this probably isn't the first one you're gonna start with. So I guess I'm glad for you that you had this opportunity to, when you started to open up and communicate more freely, then you had a chance to sort of explore the richness of this poem. Because
the first one, this is, I don't know, I think this is interesting. Then we can take questions. So I knew her through a friend, through another poet on the project. So I didn't know Patricia, but Patricia knew this other poet on the project. And like I said, when she came in, I think, a lot of poets have bad experiences with musicians. And so it's reasonable for them to wonder how it's going to go down. And, she knew I wanted to do social justice stuff. And the first poem she chose to do was extremely sexual. It was really about Black female sexuality. And I was a little bit surprised that she chose to do that. But later she said, well, that's something not talked about because we're not allowed to show that. I mean, white people do that all the time on TV shows, but you don't have Black women being seen that way. So that is an act of like advocacy, right? But I think she was testing us too, to see how are we going to handle her essentially, simulating semi-orgasm We're all adults. We can say that, in a poem. And how are we going to respond and react? Are we going to be trivial and trite about it? Or are we going to be really respectful of that? And I think she was really, after that first one, she said, looked at us and she said, y'all are good. So I think that was the test. And, trust is something, this is a lesson for everyone, right? Trust is earned,
Yes.
right? And once, like in your life with a friend or something, right? It takes a long time to earn trust, but you can, you do one thing, that trust can be gone for a long time, right? So think about trust, everyone, this way, in that you make deposits of trust in someone's bank account, and it takes a long time for that bank account to get full. But oh my God, you do one thing, everything is withdrawn. So, treat trust and honesty with your friends in the way you live your life like it's gold, because it really is, and it can go away really fast. So, if you develop a professional relationship and then one time you really screw up bad, maybe they'll give you a second chance, maybe not. Trust it's an interesting thing, trust, right?
Yes, and you had to develop that trust quickly. You said, you didn't really know her, and so maybe that's another life lesson for all of us, whether we're older students starting out, that sometimes we have to throw ourselves out there, and there we might have to resist that temptation to maybe sort of put up our defensive, and when we do that, you see what can come of it.
I was scared out of my gourd, just like inside scoop. I was like on verge of panic attack, right? Like, what the hell are we going to do? Am I going to be, you know, let's just be 100% totally honest. Here I am, a white guy, right? Who generations back, like my people oppressed her people. I mean, I have to be really careful and really respectful, and this could go wrong in so many ways. But you know what? You either try, like I said, it goes back. Let's do a circle. We're going back to what we started with, right? If you don't take a risk of failing, you never achieve anything. So my choices are either to just do nothing, or I risk maybe making a mistake or offending someone, but I have really good intentions. So I'm not going to be perfect and I'm going to fail, but I'm going to keep trying because I want to help try to make things right. So to make things right, you have to be willing to fail, be vulnerable, you put yourself out there. And particularly as a creative artist, like, Dr. Erickson just did this wonderful, wonderful series with Brian Turner, who's a fabulous poet. And this is about war, right? I mean, this is like the whole thing is vulnerable, right? You have to make yourself vulnerable or else you're not being real. And if you're not being real, then it doesn't communicate. So it's not easy. So if you're afraid of something, people, just realize you're afraid of it. And what's the definition of courage? Courage is walking through fear, right? So you take a deep breath, you walk through the fear, and bringing it back to that word passion. What is your passion? What do you want to accomplish in your life? What good do you want to do? Who do you want to help? What's important to be talked about? And you take a deep breath and you do it, and you'll make a mistake, but so what? You're trying and you'll learn how to be better at it.
Well, students, I hope you're listening out there, because what we're getting from Ben in this conversation, I think, is really, really helpful, really inspiring, and incredible. So, wow, Ben, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, for sharing with us your music, your approach not only to music but to life as well, because that's, I think, what we're really learning about here. I mean, this has just been a fantastic episode.
Well, thank you for having me, and I would be delighted if any students have questions. I'm happy to hang out for a little while or whatever, if that's cool.
I did want to let everyone know that we are preparing a playlist, a larger playlist of a lot of the music you heard from, some excerpts of that, as well as some additional music from our guests, and you'll be able to see that on our YouTube page we'll have that whole list for you so you can really explore, as well as the links that were provided in the chat. You want to check out that Bandcamp and hear more from this album that we just heard from the last piece, the Patricia Smith piece, etc. So if you have a question, please share it now. Yes, thank you so much for being our guest. You have checked all the boxes are checked. All the boxes are checked. Thank you.
Have me back sometime.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, hi, Jackie. I see in the chat. There's someone I know in the chat. Hi, Jackie.
Yes, people from Fresno are here.
Yay! Yay, Fresno.
Fresno's
Fresno in the house.
Great. There was one question I think that was about what you have next, and I think what's next for you musically. You know.
Oh man, I have a couple of things. So the tour with the new global ensemble with the traditional African Ghanaian musicians that was canceled is tentatively planned for next summer. That'll be fun. I had another band called the World Band that was going to be at SF Jazz, but COVID canceled that. So I'm trying to incorporate traditional musicians from a number of different cultures in a group, and then a follow-up to the Poets Are Gathering. We have a poet here, Bryn Saito, who writes poems about Japanese internment camps during World War II. We have Mas Masamoto, who's a well-known author, farmer, and Patricia Smith wants to record some more. So I have some tracks already left over, kind of, not left over, but that didn't make it on the Poets Are Gathering, but I want to fill it out with some poems that are addressing issues today. So that's slated for 2022. And hopefully in 23, we'll get one of the World Band out, and maybe the new global ensemble will do an album too.
Great.
Wow.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I don't know, maybe my next thing, Omari, is to hear your singing and see what you do.
Oh,
mentioned
it's already done. You tell me.
You mentioned Here Bullet, and the recording that Omari made when we first released this.
Is that you?
I'm whatever we did with the lights and the weirdness on stage. Yeah, that I did one of them with him. Yeah, I don't know which one you heard, but yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Sing Bullet.
Damn.
That
You're good.
That started off everything. We did a Facebook Live discussion about that, and people still I get raves about this all the time. Oh my God, who was that? That was an incredible performance. I mean, really amazing.
Well, I think there's a nexus point here for all of the things that you do, Ben. I mean, getting you here to talk about composition with Kurt, getting you here to talk about the world music connection with Lisa, poetry, voice. I'm here for you. Jazz, Max is here hiding. Our professor, I don't know if the audience can see Max, but he's here hiding out there in the background. And there are so many different places in which you hit. So we would love to have you back and discuss, you should probably come for a couple of days back, maybe, and we'll have some different things and connect our students with Fresno too. I mean, our students need to know there are so many options for where they can continue to study after they are finished with us.
Yep.
Oh, I'd be delighted. This is a hip crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Ben, thank you again. Thank you for this wonderful conversation, and thank you for joining our community today. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor.
Thank you, audience. Thanks for being here today. Spread the word. Let everybody know about what you heard.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.